Yo, where them Catholics at? Man, what's the matter with these bishops?
And welcome back to another episode of Catholic Convert Show. As usual, I am one of your two most favorite hosts on all media programs. And that other guy's Ed. The good one will be back sometime this week.
I'm just filling in.
Just filling in. That's all right. As the executive producer of the show, I do have to say, I've seen better, but I've also seen worse.
There you go. But I do make a damn fine key grip.
Yeah. Now,
so there we go.
You make a damn fine key grip. And to pat myself on the back,
Oh boy.
I've also seen much, much better. Very, very little have I seen that's worse. But hey, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so I was posting on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it earlier, and I simply asked the question. I was like, okay, this is for Catholic converts only.
Mm-hmm.
How was your family? What was the reception of your family when you came into the church? Were they supportive? Were they indifferent? Or were they outright against it? And the number of replies on that thing made me realize that there's a lot of people who had to deal with a whole lot of crap from their families and the ones that were absolutely closest to them when they came into the church. And so it's kind of nuts to see that that's the way that it went.
Mm.
You know, I'm lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it, but I don't have any contact with my family, my biological family. And it's strictly, because they're not compatible with peace. That's the way that I like to describe it. There's like almost 100 comments, and the majority of them are, we don't know why you're doing this. Let's exorcise some demons from you in a family evangelical intervention. Now, there's also a lot of them that are very supportive, some that had indifferent, but there's so many out there that just outright had their family cut them off.
Mm.
And it's so weird, but it goes to a point that there is a cost, right? When it comes to conversion, it's not cheap and easy. Following Christ is, you're walking through that narrow gate. You're not, freewheeling in the field, right? And some people that have grown up, Southern Baptist, Pentecostal, evangelical, whatever, have had amazing experiences when their family just goes, oh, okay, well, at least you're still a Christian. And you're like, oh, wow, how rare is that, right? You're very surprised, and then you've got people like my wife. My wife's a cradle Catholic, but she was lapsed, had never received communion, was never confirmed. And none of that happened until I made the decision to come into the church. And then I told my family, you're all Catholic now, so get dressed, we're going to mass. And that's pretty much how it went. I'm not exaggerating when I say that either.
Mm-hmm.
But my wife's family, none of them are still Catholic, at least not practicing Catholics. And there's several of them that have fallen into the weird Hillsong, non-denominational, laser light show Protestantism, who now refer to my wife as a Satan worshiper and a cannibal.
Yeah.
So there's that. But it's still crazy to me. I thought my wife was the outlier, right? I thought that was a rare instance of, hey, We're going to be full-blown Catholic now, come full into communion with the church. And just figured I would put that out there and not get, yeah, nobody cares. What are the nieces and nephews doing? Or, hey, awesome, congrats, and then leave it at that. Now, it was outright vitriol that she received. And, I'm fortunate coming from a Protestant background. I never even had that experience at all because there was no one to say it to me. I'm pretty sure they would if they were around, but they're not. They didn't. And when I think of that, it reminds me of that when you try to temper your responses to people who are vehemently anti-Catholic, it's got to be much harder when it's your family who on Monday, when you haven't told them you're coming into the Catholic Church, are just like, hey, you coming over for the barbecue? And then on Tuesday, when you say, oh, by the way, I'm getting baptized Catholic and I'm going to start going to mass and da-da-da-da-da. And they're like, oh, you demon. Look, I don't know what that's like. My wife does, but I still can't speak to the way it made her feel inside, even if she does articulate how it made her feel. And there's so many people online that have gone through, a surprising number of people online that have dealt with that and way much worse. And it's like, my hat's off to you, because that's strange to me.
Yeah.
Now, it's not like they came out and said, oh, I'm going to be a Democrat, because that's I can, expect that kind of response. What is wrong with you? You demon. Are you insane? I totally get that response. Right? But that's not what they did. They said, I'm going to be Catholic. So you're cradle Catholic. My wife's cradle Catholic. I'm the outlier. I'm the outlier of coming from a Protestant background and having zero people even, present to give a crap whether or not I'm Catholic. When people are always LARPing online about, return to Christendom. Now, even if everyone converted to Christianity, I'm just saying Christianity as broad spectrum, Protestant, non-denominational, Catholic, whatever. Christendom is still not possible. And look, it's a great value and it's a great ideal to hold, but Christendom is this vision of a Christian theocracy, which it's this government founded upon and upholding Christian values, right? It is the broadest collective culture and institutions of the faith. And within the Catholic Church, for the 99% of it, we have that. Obviously there are some weirdos in the Catholic Church that seek to dismantle, that seek to, they're sedevacantists or any other kind of weirdos like the Catholics for Choice. They're not really Catholic. They're CNOs. They're Catholic in name only. But I still think it's important to push for a Catholic culture and expand that even further. But here's the problem. If we look at society and modern secular culture, you have the counterculturalists, which would be us, the Catholics, the morally upright and the opposite of the depraved lunatics that are out there living their own truths. But you know what is missing?
What?
What are we pushing back with? When you think of counterculture, you think back to the 80s and where you had everybody being all, I'm rebelling, and they got the punk rock mohawks, and they were all dressing like David Bowie against their parents, who were shrieking in horror as they wore their chinos, loafers, and button-down shirts, polos, whatever, right? That was the counterculture. Now counterculture has shifted because those counterculturists of modern antiquity have all become the embodiment of Ziggy Stardust on methamphetamines. But what are we pushing back with? Rather than complaining about how things are, it's a very small minority of people. And when I say this, I mean it in terms of volume, as in audible volume, that are creating culture. If we look at Christian and Catholic culture over the centuries, we built these beautiful churches. We painted these beautiful paintings. We created these beautiful sculptures. For the most part, the only thing we're doing now is complaining about how bad things are.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think needs to happen to start shifting the pendulum of us not having any audible culture that is not, and I'm not saying let's make something new. I'm not saying let's make something new, but how can we reignite the living of that culture as a whole, as the Catholic community, to where it's just collectively understood that this is what we do as Catholics, and this is who we are, and this is how we get our culture in front of the people who are not Catholic, who are not Christians, where it seems a whole lot easier for the secular culture to blast itself into the public eye so much easier. We've talked about this a little bit before with, you have these like Angel Network, right? They're making films that are entertaining, but they're not 5 minutes of a sex scene just because you're trying to use that to further the plot of a wizard looking for Starbucks. Culture is comprised of a collective of architecture, art, music, customs, traditions. How can we get that broadcasted greater to where it gets readopted? Because culture is what draws people in.
Sure.
When you have a very loud culture, a culture that is in your face all the time, there's a mirroring effect where you start to adopt that.
Sure.
It's like if I living in the Southwest for as long as I did, it was impossible not to pick up some of the local cultural habits and even adopt some of them that I've carried over to now. But now the majority of Catholic media is simply reporting on what's going on in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only thing that's made the biggest impact so far was the National Eucharistic Congress.
Yeah.
We had the National Eucharistic Procession that started at, 4 or 5 different locations.
Mm-hmm.
And that got huge attention. And so many people were curious. And so many people came to those processions, not even Catholic, not knowing what was going on. And they're like, okay, what is this? Why is all of a sudden people just kneeling down in the street when this guy in a white robe walks by holding a gold thingy? And I've personally talked to no less than 33 people, because I've got them all in my DMs right now, that have told me that they started following my newsletter because they attended one of those processions or the National Eucharistic Congress itself. And now they're thinking of coming into the church.
Wow.
And I hold obviously zero credit for it, but they're like, Catholic convert. Maybe that's what I'm going to be. I should read the guy who writes about being a Catholic convert. But we've talked about this before. We don't do the National Eucharistic Congress and these giant processions every single week, every single year, every single month. Are we limited now to just these big declarations to draw some people in, and then we fade off into the security? Because I thought we were going for a full revival.
We tend to do that as Catholics, though, because I know we've done similar things in one of the parishes that I hang out at, where they'll do something really big and everyone gets excited for an afternoon, and then there's absolutely no follow-up. They just go back to being your typical Catholic, you know. And it's interesting that you say you've got these people in your DMs that are saying, because of what I saw at the Eucharistic Congress, I'm considering becoming a Catholic. So they saw Catholics simply being Catholic, and that was enough to draw them in. That should say something to us. If we would just behave as Catholics, it's going to draw some attention, and it's going to interest some people enough that they look into it. You mentioned about, you know, when they have these Eucharistic processions, and I've seen so many videos that take place like in New York City, Philadelphia, major cities on the East Coast. And you've got a priest walking through the streets, sometimes some nasty neighborhoods, and there's the altar servers with him, and there's the incense going. And he's got, obviously, he doesn't even touch the monstrance directly, you know? So people realize, okay, maybe I might not know what's going on, but obviously these people are focusing their attention on this golden object that's containing a circular disc. And I see other people as they pass by falling to their knees, blessing themselves, praying. I got to know what this is all about. You know what I mean? And I've seen it where they'll be walking down the street and people will look to their left and right. They'll see people falling to their knees, and they do the same just because that's what they're seeing other people. They say, oh, I should be kneeling. They don't even know why. They just know that they should be kneeling. And maybe they're going to start a conversation with the guy next to them that knelt first after the priest passes by. And there's so many things that are so beautiful within the Catholic faith. So many things that if people saw and were exposed to, they would, at a minimum, ask questions. Are you going to draw them all in? Obviously not. But at least they see Catholics in action being Catholics, as opposed to just barking at them on X or whatever other social media site. You know, instead of oh, you're a bunch of heretics, you're a bunch of heathens, you're a bunch of devil worshipers. You know, if they see what we actually do, maybe that's what it needs to get a conversation going. I've said this a number of times, even on this show, where if Catholics even just voted as a Catholic should vote, this would be a completely different country right now. And it would be a different country going forward. You wouldn't have Catholics for choice. You wouldn't have Catholics for Parish. You know, you wouldn't have these things, because they would, if Catholics really understood and lived their faith, you know, Catholicism as a whole would be looked at differently. And we could really change not only this country, we could change the world. And we need to get back to that. I mean, I've seen the clips of the mass at your church. Now, you've got a church that probably, I mean, how many folks does your church hold? What's the capacity there?
So we have 3 different masses every single Sunday. We have an 8 a.m., a 10 a.m., and then we have the 12 p.m. Latin Mass.
Yeah.
When it's not in the middle of summer, when people are like variously on vacation or whatever, we typically have between 900 and 1,100 people in Mass at each Mass. Well, I would say the Latin Mass is probably closer to 700-800, so a little less there, but it's generally standing room only.
Yeah. And
So
how many
I would
parishioners?
say we got 2,800 different families. So
Okay, 2,800 families.
if you just said the average family had 5 people, 3 kids, which I don't think I know I don't know but one Catholic family at my parish that's only got 3 kids.
Yeah, right.
So there's usually more than that. But let's just say the average has 3 kids, 5. That's nearly 15,000 people for the parish.
Okay. So this is the point I'm trying to make here, is that you've got priests there, you've got deacons there that are, I think, I don't know if it you can correct me if you don't think it's the right term, but they follow a more traditional Catholic values sort of an approach to this, and where you don't see a lot of that up here in the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, whatever you want to call it. The church that I do all my CCD and Bible study and everything, there's 6,500 families, 6,500, almost 3 times as many as you have, right? And I think that the church holds 1,001 people. That's the capacity for it. They think they average somewhere between 300 and 400 per Mass. So obviously, if you do the math, and I spent a couple weekends, I went to every single Mass, and I counted the people going in and out, and I did all the calculations, and I figured that attendance at the church that I hang out at mostly is somewhere between 13 and 14% of the enrollment there at that church. That's pathetic. So, we can't expect the world to see Catholicism as something to jump into and really dive into if the people who are Catholic aren't doing that and don't see it that way. They've got to see Eucharistic processions where there's the entire parish walking around the town. They've got to see guys out and about, Catholic men who have a rosary in their hand because they're taking advantage of the time that they have to get in a decade or 2. Yeah, you and I, guys like us, we have this. This is never more than 3 inches away from guys like us. I got another one in my pocket, But this is what people need
like
to
50
see.
rosaries at my house, bro.
Oh my gosh, I could open up a used rosary store. But
I could. My kids have so many rosaries. Like there's one hanging on every doorknob. There's like 12 hanging on the crucifix by the front door. My kids have like 3 or 5 in their rooms.
There's
I've got 2 or 3 in my car.
Yeah, there's a crucifix in every single room in my house.
I'll tell you something here.
Yeah,
now, where we live, I'm just outside of Greenville, South Carolina. Now, this area is absolutely booming with incoming Catholics. It's wild because it's the South, predominantly very Bible Belt, anti-Catholic. But this particular area is growing and expanding with more and more Catholics, right? And I think in the county that I live in, they're expecting about 100,000 more people to be moving here over the next 15 to 18 years. Let's say 10% of them are Catholic, which that might even be generous. Let's call it 5% of Catholic. We're still getting a ton of new people and new growth here. And I think there's 15, maybe 20 different parishes, probably all in a 50-mile radius of each other. And they're all full.
Yeah.
Now, what gets me is I'm not going to call him out. I'm not going to say his name. but there is a priest here who is the parish priest who really reignited Lex Vivendi, Lex Credendi at one of the largest parishes in the area when he became the parish priest. I believe it was like in 2002. He has the opportunity to host a Eucharistic rally or procession or whatever in a very large downtown area. He doesn't want to. For the simple reason that he doesn't want the attention that it would bring. And my question is, why not?
Isn't that the point?
But what it is the area is, anytime I've gone down there, I don't know why, but anytime I've gone down there, there's always this massive group of people protesting about something in the downtown Greenville area. They're always protesting. And most of the time that I've been down there, it was either they're doing some big rally for Ukraine and screwing up my lunch plans because they're blocking the sidewalk and I can't get to my reservations.
Yeah.
Or you've got these pro-abortionists on the right that, in full deranged regalia, yelling across the street to this group of pro-life people, nowhere near an abortion clinic. It's way further down the road, and we've almost got that one closed. It'll probably be closed within the next 12 months, and we're still working on it, but it's going to happen. And my assumption is that he's afraid if we did a Eucharistic procession in the downtown Greenville area, it would get a lot of pushback, a lot of attention from the media, and maybe even some counter protesters, even though we're not doing a protest, to go out there and try to cause trouble.
Fine.
And that's my response. It's okay, fine.
Yeah.
Let it happen. Why?
Exactly.
Because it's supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be easy. But he won't do it. He absolutely won't do it. It's been brought up several times. So we're looking at possibly doing one in another downtown area 10 miles away at my parish.
Yeah.
Because it's outside of the deanery, and this guy's the head of the deanery.
Oh.
So it's outside of the deanery because we can't do it inside his. Right?
Yeah.
He's the head of the deanery, so we can't we're doing it anyway, man, without causing a whole lot of problems within the diocese, right? So that's obviously not what we want to do. We don't want to be fighting with other Catholics. We think he's got a very wrong opinion on this matter, so we'll go do it somewhere else. It's a smaller area, but it's still populated. But if that's what it's going to take, if more people are coming into the church and more people are starting to even just get their interest piqued about Catholicism because of the National Eucharistic Congress, because of the Eucharistic processions, why would you say, too risky? Too risky.
Yeah. No, listen, I'll use myself as a very tiny example of, I think
you're a large man.
Here.
You're what, 6'9"?
Somewhere around there. But
everyone's 6'9" compared to me.
Well, I will say you would look up to me. I'm like just 6 foot. But when and you and I have talked about some of the stuff that I do on the side there, and one of the things I do, and I do it completely on my own. It's not attached to any organization whatsoever. Is I fill up my little backpacks full of food and supplies and all sorts of goodies, and I go into rough neighborhoods, and I find people in these drug houses and all these crazy neighborhoods and stuff. And I hand out these backpacks and I talk to them and I take them to lunch and I pray with them if they'll let me. I do all this stuff and people will say, well, why would you do that when you know you might not come home? And I say to them, well, that doesn't even factor in. This is what Christ put on my heart. This is what he told me needed to be done. I'm not going to make decisions based on what I fear may or may not happen. I'm going to make decisions based on what I'm called to do. And so I say that as an example of what we need to do on a broader scale. A priest at a parish, a bishop in a diocese should not be afraid to do something on a large scale, something that's very Catholic, because they're concerned of what the reaction is going to be. If there'll be some protesters, if there'll be bad publicity on the local news or whatever. Oh, look at what those Catholics are doing now. No, that's not how you make your decisions. Is it the right thing to do? And exposing more people to Christ through something like Eucharistic procession or any of the many things that we do as Catholics is the right thing to do. You let somebody else worry about the repercussions or what may or may not happen. That's not for us. If Christ is putting it on your heart that something needs to happen, then something needs to happen. You know, we don't get a choice in that. And I'm pretty sure that Christ told all of us that by virtue of our baptism, that we need to go out into the world and we need to bring his message to people. But we're not going to do that by hiding in church for an hour on Sunday and sneaking out of the parking lot and hoping that I don't run into anybody I know at the bagel shop who may ask me where I just came from. That's ridiculous. Another problem I have is, well, I don't know if it's a problem, but something that disappoints me a little bit, I will say. So any of the priests that are anywhere in the vicinity here, when they leave the grounds of the church, it's either going out for lunch or dinner or to go grocery shopping or to meet up with people. They're in khakis and polo shirts. They're not dressed as a priest. I'm sorry. You are a priest 24/7. God bless priests. I love what they do. I could never do what they do, but they made a decision to become a Catholic priest. And by virtue of that decision, they are on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Okay? That's just the way it is. So when you walk out, people should know that you are a Catholic priest. That's my opinion on this. I mean, yeah, if you're going to the beach or something, I don't think you should be in your cassock.
Right.
Okay?
I was going to say the exceptions.
There are exceptions.
The exceptions I've seen.
Yeah.
You know, like my priest, when he goes on annual leave, he's on annual leave.
Well, that's different.
It's not like if he sees someone who dies on the shore, you know, when he's like, I don't know, in Morocco or whatever, he's like, oh, not my problem. I'm off the clock. He'll go over there and do what a priest has got to do. Right. But he's not walking around in a cassock with a collar.
No. But see that, but my point being that, and honestly, yes, there are many situations where they can dress down. But the fact that so many of them are so reluctant to we might need a priest over here now. You heard that.
His jersey. I read it off his jersey.
Who knows what's going on? But if you are a Catholic priest and you are, I don't want to say afraid, but you're almost embarrassed to walk out of the rectory wearing priestly garb, I got to ask you why. What's your issue with that? Why are you afraid to? There's a little Italian restaurant across the street. You won't go into that restaurant wearing your priestly garb because you're afraid someone might say something, someone might point, someone might snicker, someone might make a comment, a negative comment about you being a priest. Okay, so what? But you also might get a conversation going. Hey, Father, what's going on? What? I've always had questions about the church. Do you have a minute? That kind of stuff. I just don't like that. In so many instances, it doesn't matter if you're a religious or if you're part of the laity. So many Catholics are either embarrassed or afraid to be a Catholic in public, And I don't get that. I don't understand that. I can only assume that you don't fully understand what it means to be Catholic. And therefore, you don't want to be seen as a Catholic out in public. And if you are truly, if you understand the faith and you're embarrassed about it, then why are you a Catholic? That would be my follow-up. You know what I mean? So,
see, I don't really know. I wouldn't really say they're embarrassed, and I don't think most people are embarrassed to be a Catholic. But we do live in this really weird culture, where, like, I don't have bumper stickers on my car. Okay, I don't, just because
neither do
I've never found anything to put on there that I would even do, even if it's a sticker of Our Lady of Guadalupe or St. Michael, or even like my parish. We have stickers for my parish, right?
Yeah.
I'm not putting them on the car just because I don't want to put them on the car. But I have seen some instances where someone has a Biden sticker on their car, or they have a Trump sticker on their car, or whatever, and it gets vandalized because of that sticker. I don't want to have to shoot someone because you tried to slash my tires. I really don't.
I get that. But okay, so let me throw this scenario out.
But I will say that I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with confrontation. I do think a lot of people are uncomfortable with having to defend their faith if they publicly express their faith and they get any kind of pushback. And I think people are worried about being targeted by someone, because look, there's a lot of anti-Catholic rhetoric. There's Catholic churches that get vandalized and attacked all the time. There's almost like one a day in the US alone where Catholic churches are vandalized. So I get that, like, man, I really don't want to get into a confrontation, so I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna go out and we're not telling you run around, swing your rosary over your head, and scream at everyone in Latin. I mean, that would be awesome, but you don't have to.
No, but
I do think a lot of people are just worried about being targeted, and that includes priests. Priests get attacked all the time.
Sure they do. But isn't that a risk they run by being a Catholic priest? I mean,
I know it's a risk, and I'm saying it's the fear of that happening does sometimes probably win the argument about, hey, I'm walking around everywhere in my cassock, or at least in my collar.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, my men's group, we have breakfast together at a local diner, first Saturday of each month. And the very first time we started doing this, the first time we sit down, there'll be a dozen of us, 15 of us. We're at a long table, so they have to put us kind of in the middle of the room. So we're exposed to everybody that's there. And it just came naturally. Our plates were put in front of us. We said grace. And there were a lot of eyes, there were a lot of people turning, everything. I'll tell you what, 4 or 5 months into that, people being used to it, we start saying grace, half a dozen tables around us will start saying grace along with us. Some of them aren't even Catholic. Some of them they're just Christian, or they just think, wow, what a cool idea to give thanks to our Lord for what's in front of us. And so, okay, so that's kind of a safe area to do that kind of thing in. But I think it holds true when you step out of there. You still, like I say, you are not a Catholic for an hour a week. And I'm not saying you go out of your way to go over in front of someone and wave your rosary in their face and say, look at this. But you shouldn't change who you are because of your surroundings. I mean, think if Christ had done that. Think of if the apostles had done that. Think of any Christian for the first 4 centuries of Christianity, if they had changed who they were because of where they were, and certainly they faced much greater dangers than we do today. I mean, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to me here? If someone sees I'm a Catholic and they don't like it, they're going to yell something at me. They're going to throw some slurs my way. The same kind of crap that happens on next to me every day. Maybe, and if they do,
that's just because you're an unlikable person. That's nothing to do.
Well, I didn't want to bring that part into it, but But obviously, I mean, that's the big old elephant in the room. but
that's
you
the
know what
nature
I'm
of the
saying?
internet, right? You're a little safer there. You can get on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook and say, I'm Catholic, and then you get random fat people living in their
Exactly.
basements yell at you, and you're good after that.
But if in June I have a Sacred Heart of Jesus flag out in front of my house, if someone wants to torch it, tear it down, if they want to throw, whatever, something on my car because they don't like that there's a Sacred Heart of Jesus flag on my house, so be it. I mean, that's nothing compared to what so many others have suffered for bringing their Catholicism to the forefront and allowing people, like you say, it's not putting it in front of anyone. It's not shoving it in anyone's face. It's like if I walk down the street, if I see a house and they've got a Biden flag out in front or a Harris flag out, I'll say a little prayer for them, but I'm not gonna damage their house or their flag or
Yeah, in
anything.
South Carolina, down here in the South, we just go, oh, bless their heart.
Exactly, right. But you're not going to do anything horrible, and so that's I don't know. I just think that we need to be when we started this whole conversation about, well, how do we get people excited about the faith and how do we grow the faith and things like that? How do we draw people in? Well, you draw people in by showing them what it is to be a Catholic. I do research on this stuff all the time, and I look at these parishes, actually these dioceses that are in like Wichita, Kansas, Lincoln, Nebraska. There's a number of them where they are a third of the size of the diocese that I'm a member of here, and yet they will put more men in the seminary in 1 year than my diocese will put in 10 years. And I'm thinking, why? But then I'll look into it. I'll go to the sites of the individual churches that make up those dioceses, and they've got fired up priests who are saying it for real from the pulpit. They've got, and I'm not saying traditional Latin mass is I mean, I rarely, if ever, go to one. It's a beautiful thing, but I'm not saying you have to have that. But be reverent. You've got some beautiful masses going on in your church that are not particularly TLM, but they're very reverent. They really make you feel, wow, I'm in a Catholic church. I'm watching something special here. And that's the thing. Just behave like Catholics. I talk about that Father Beard all the time and watching his YouTube videos, God rest his soul. But he just stood in front of everybody and he said what needed to be said and wasn't worried if he's upsetting the person in the third pew or if someone's going to walk out in the fifth pew. You know what I mean? He wasn't worried about that. He was being Catholic because that's what he was called to do.
Right. And so, like I said, complaining about how bad things are, complaining about how, I don't know, people are too secular. Okay. It's because the loudest people in the room are the secular people.
Yeah.
And when I say the loudest, I'm meaning that metaphorically. Yes, they're vocal, obviously, but their works, their art, their music, the culture, the way they live, the things they do, the buildings they put up, all reflect that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Complaining on social media about, look at this ugly architecture. Look how ugly these churches are. Okay, when's the last time you organized a building fundraiser and make a church beautiful?
Yeah.
When's the last time you put on a shirt that said, I'm Catholic, and volunteered your time, not with a bunch of church, with people at your church, organizing it, but you doing it and going and doing works of mercy?
Yeah.
Right. Complaining about how bad things are is not counterculture. It's complaining about the status quo of the culture.
Absolutely.
It's like people want, well, why can't Republican culture? Okay, well, maybe because the only thing the Republicans do are bitch. Right?
Yeah.
Create more, embody more, show more. Not just sit there and complain about more. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
It's not the same. You can't have a counterculture if there's no culture to fall back on. Well, we have a culture. Okay, well then show it.
Well, that's exactly right. The Catholic culture.
So the answer that you're saying is balls. Just more balls.
Exactly.
Stop being worried about it.
Don't be worried.
More
Be
balls.
be who you are called to be, and don't worry about what people are going to say or how they're going to react.
That's kind of the same answer to all the people that have had to endure getting cut off by their family when we were talking about it earlier with the people converting from Protestant backgrounds or even non-denominational or other faith backgrounds.
Sure.
And they come into the Catholic Church. Half their family cuts them off, half the family don't care, and there's that one that wants to hold an intervention and beat them in the head with the King James Bible.
Yeah,
which that one doesn't hurt as much as the actual Bible because it's thinner, it's lighter,
exactly.
it's missing content, so it doesn't hurt as much when you get hit with it.
Yeah, it's true though. It's
if you try to hit them with a Dewey Rames Bible,
whoa, that'll do some damage.
That's some Tyson knockout power.
It is. Listen, it's like there's this video I've seen of Jordan Peterson. I love Jordan Peterson, but there's this.
I'm indifferent.
But you're gonna love this part though. So this activist stands up at one of his talks, and she's yelling and screaming about how we need to change government. We need to stop. We need to stop oil, and we need to be less reliant on this, that, and the other thing, and we need to change this and that. And then he just asked her, he's like, "Where do you live?" The girl was like 28 years old. Well, I live at my parents' house. What job do you have? I don't work currently. What's the last time you cleaned your room? Well, no, it's kind of messy right now. He says, you have no control over your own life. Your own life is a big steaming mess. But you're going to tell us how to change the world and change the government, and you're going to make this huge impact on everything. No, you're not. You have to be in charge of your own life and regulate your own life before you can do that on a broader scale. It's the same thing here. That's what I'm saying. If you're living your life appropriately, if you're living the way a Catholic should live, then you can step out there and you can try to bring others in based on the example you're providing. You can't be this lackluster Catholic. You can't be a lazy Catholic. You can't be a Christmas, Easter Catholic and then say, wow, why is my parish shrinking? Why are there so few kids coming back to church after they get out of college? Well, what's the example they have? There is none. And that's the thing. It's the thing. Like, I see it all the time. I've been a CCD instructor for 10 years. The number of kids who have gone through my class and been confirmed that I have ever seen even one more time in church, I could count it on one hand. And there have been a few hundred kids who have gone through my class, and 2 or 3 of them still go to church. That's embarrassing. That's wrong. That needs to change. But we all need to be a part of that. Their families have to be a part of it. The church has to be a part of it. The priest have to be a part of it. The catechists have to be a part of it. We all have to stand up and start behaving as Catholics if we expect anyone else to join us, or if we expect our kids to remain Catholic. You gotta act.
Right. And I do want to add a clarifier to that, because when people go, well, you don't act Catholic.
Well, okay. Live as a Catholic.
Live as a Catholic. I mean, because look, none of us are perfect.
No.
There's plenty of us that are like, my most recurring sin is road rage.
You and all other people.
Like, I'm to the point that, and send all the letters. I'm gonna go ahead and say it before Ed does. Send all the letters here. Women shouldn't be allowed to drive.
Oh boy.
They shouldn't. They should not be allowed to drive. I'm glad that my wife is of the same mind, because I couldn't give her the car keys and tell her to go anywhere right now. She says, no, you drive. I'm okay with it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my biggest issue, is my biggest hang up is I get angry with people who just don't know how to drive. When it's a slight drizzle, they act like lava is falling from the sky.
Yeah.
They're like, you don't have to go 10 in a 45 when it's drizzling. Right. I'm ready to run you off the road, but I'll call a priest if you hit a tree. So I'm still living Catholic.
Well, that's good.
Right. But
Uh,
no, like, well, you don't act Catholic. You mean I don't act human? I don't act like this horrible physical wretch that requires the mercy of Christ in my life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
yeah.
Like, because that's what I am. That's what you are. That's what everybody listening to this is. You're all horrible, worthless, dying,
Absolutely.
sinful wretches that have no other option and no other hope but Christ and his infinite mercy.
Listen, you know, Jesus
That's
Christ.
exactly what you are.
Yeah, Jesus Christ came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am the first. I will always be the first one to admit to that. I am on top of his list of people that need saving. Absolutely.
But living as a Catholic, because Catholicism isn't passive.
No.
It's active. You didn't get baptized in your blow up kiddie pool in the middle of a high school gym, and now you just go, oh, I got Jesus in my heart. No. You're called to live the faith every single day, every second of the day. That you fall short? Absolutely. Just like everybody else does.
Yeah.
But it's you want to create a world where our culture as Catholics is more prevalent, then start being Catholic.
Yeah.
And not just being Catholic. Be with a big B, not a little b. It's like church with a big C, not a little c.
Absolutely.
Right. And people go, well, your religion shouldn't be your identity. It absolutely is if you're Catholic.
If it isn't, there's a problem.
Exactly. I am a Catholic before I am a man.
Yeah. You're a Catholic before you're a father, before you're a husband.
I'm a Catholic before I'm a father. I'm a Catholic before I'm a husband.
Yeah.
I love God and his holy church utmost.
Yeah.
Next comes my wife. Next comes my kids. And then everywhere else.
What did Jesus say when the guy said, he said, follow me. And the guy's like, well, I got to bury my dad. And what's he said? He says, let the dead bury the dead. Right? You either come now or, dude, I'm hightailing it out of here. I'm calling you now. I don't, So that tells you, Christ is saying, being with him is
Jesus is looking around like, bro, this is not Costco. You don't get a rain check.
Exactly, right? Oh boy.
Because those Costco's back then were lit. And I've heard that the hot dogs were still $1.50 back then too.
Which was a little steep at that point.
A little steep.
But they caught up. Oh man.
You got 7 minutes. Can you run us with what you brought? Because I didn't
I
realize we were going this long. I haven't looked at the time.
We can always get it. I tell you this, that I've got all these different photographs that are in my collection. And it's not like today where, everyone's got 5,000 pictures on their phone. We're sending pictures back and forth. If I'm looking for a picture, if I decide I want to see an Eskimo kissing a fish at sunset in Sheboygan, and if I type that in, I'm going to find a picture of it. Back in the day, it wasn't like that, So all the photos that are in my collection are actual original photographs from like AP, UPI, stuff like that. So this is a photograph. I don't know if you know this guy. This is a Catholic priest. And his last name is Liedeke. His first name, this is Chaplain Angelo Liedeke, and that's an actual photograph from June 3rd of 1968. And there he is having his little meal in the mess tent with his Pepsi can. It's pretty cool though. But he was a chaplain. He was a Roman Catholic priest, a chaplain in the Vietnam War. Now, the reason I have this photo, and the reason he is well known, is because he received the Medal of Honor. And here's what happened. On the morning of December 6th, 1967, he was in the field with the 4th Battalion, 12th Infantry Regiment, when the battalion's A Company came under intense fire from a large enemy force. the chaplain Leideke moved to within 15 meters of an enemy machine gun position to reach 2 wounded men and placed himself between the enemy and the wounded soldiers. He then dragged them to the relative safety of a landing zone for evacuation. Throughout the fight, Chaplain Leideke moved through enemy fire to administer last rites to the dying and evacuate the wounded. Noticing another trapped and seriously wounded man, Chaplain Leideke crawled to his aid. Realizing that the wounded soldier was too heavy to carry, he rolled on his back, placed the man on his chest, and through sheer determination and fortitude, crawled back to the landing zone using his elbows and knees to push himself along. On several occasions, when the landing zone was under small arms and rocket fire, Chaplain Leideke stood up and personally directed medevac helicopters. During the day-long engagement, and despite painful wounds in the neck and foot, Chaplain Leideke carried 23 wounded soldiers to the landing zone for evacuation. 23 men he carried to a landing zone within 15 meters of enemy fire. And so he's one of only 3 chaplains who earned the Medal of Honor in Vietnam. And he's the only one of those 3 that actually lived through the experience that earned him that honor. Now, when I was talking about doing what you're called to do, regardless of the circumstances, and at least initially, that's what Reverend Leideke did. There is a proviso to this, and it gets a little bit disappointing because later on, back in the States, Reverend Leideke actually left the priesthood in 1975. He married a former nun who encouraged him to get involved into social justice activities. So he got involved in all sorts of crazy stuff. He even spent time in prison because he went to Fort Benning and threw blood on photographs of generals and things like that. He renounced his Medal of Honor. He actually left it at the Vietnam Veterans War Memorial with a note to President Reagan. He died in 2017 at the age of 85. But for a brief shining moment, he was a hero. He did what he was called to do. He served well. He did what any chaplain under those circumstances could do. And there's 23 men who were evacuated thanks to his bravery. So that's
awesome.
He was a great guy until a former nun got the best of him. See, I guess there is something to say about, women and the influence they have on us.
Absolutely true. When you hear stories like that, you can't help but wonder why for so many centuries, numerous cultures that never even had contact with each other across a millennia all put restrictions on their women.
Again, you can send those letters to...
Hey, what are you going to do? Cancel me? Go ahead. It's fine.
Oh, boy. But, it's good. It's a great story.
It is a great story. I like hearing the Vietnam stories too, because my dad served in Vietnam.
Oh, your dad was in Vietnam? Wow. Yeah, my dad was in World War II on a destroyer.
Nice. My dad was born in 43.
Oh, so I was born in 43. Almost.
Dad, is that you?
Oh, boy. On that note.
Hey, I don't know what my mom was doing.
No, I wasn't born in 43, but as we well know. But
right.
Yeah, it's great. I've got so many things like this and down in the basement there, and sometimes I just flip through them for a little inspiration because this goes along with what I'm saying is that God gives us a challenge, God gives us a job, He gives us He puts something on our hearts. You need to accomplish this. And sometimes you're like, dude, I can't do that. And well, God's not interested in your excuses. He's not interested in you saying yes or no. He's just interested in you getting it done. So,
It's kind of how it works. It's not up to you. It's just like when people go, well, God sounds mean sometimes. Well, then your view of God is very narrow.
Right.
But all right. 20 seconds. So we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing and subscribing. But most of all, thanks for shoving the Catholic religion in the face of all your non-Catholic friends.
I think I have that bumper sticker.
Later.
Later, guys. God bless you.